I'm Dawn Watson, and I'm here with my good friend Michelle Murphy, and we are Murphy, Watson and Company, and our company today is none other than world-renowned author Stephen Gaines.
World renowned. Thank you for upping me, yes, to world renowned.
Well,
yes.
you are, my
well,
goodness.
It's kind of like maybe East Hampton renowned, but I'll take the world. That's great too. How are you?
You've got the world.
Good to
Well, anyone who's covered the Beatles and Miami, you go all around.
see you. Beatles in Miami, yes, I
Yeah.
know.
So you're far more than just us Philistines.
Right. Well, I don't think you're a Philistine.
Oh, is that an insult? Now, I think you elevated it.
Well, Philistines really are only interested in money and things like that. And
Well, then I'm a
think,
total failure.
You know,
I am one.
exactly. There you go. There you go. As if they weren't interested in art or things like that. I think that's
I
where
think
the
I'm the
Philistine
opposite then.
reference came
Okay.
from. Exactly.
All right. I love that title, though. How did you come up with that? Philistine at the hedgerow.
Philistines at the hedgerow. It just came to me one
It
day.
did?
It really did.
So
Well, I was also
poetic.
thinking of Barbarians at the Gate. And I thought I wanted a title that was kind of like Barbarians at the Gate, and then Philistines at the Hedgerow just kind of bounced out to me. It's interesting because, publishers fight with you about what you want to name your book.
Sure.
And I've never had a publisher allow me to name a book that the name that I picked out in the first place. For instance, The Beatles' The Love You Make, which I thought was great. It was the last lyric of the last album, of the last song. I thought it was terrific, and they said, you can't call it that. And I said, why not? It's perfect. They said, no, we need something more about the Beatles. So I went home and I made up 5 fake names, like Between the Sheets with the Beatles, or just really horrible things.
So they'd
So
have to go
eventually
for
they
that.
let me do that, and with the Philistines at the Hedgerow, they were totally against it. They said, nobody will know what a Philistine is. I said, no, only a Philistine won't know what
Exactly.
a Philistine is. So I came up with other terrible names, like Between the Sheets and the Hamptons, and my stock of terrible names. And then Jerry Delafemina, of all people, wrote a letter to the publisher and said that he's paid millions of dollars to name products and that he thought Philistines at the Hedgerow was a great name. And so with his expertise, they allowed me to call it that. But I lost the struggle with the next book, the Manhattan real estate book, which I wanted to call Eminent Domain. And they said no, so I just called it Sky's the Limit, which I knew was a terrible name. But I lost the will to fight.
But you can kind of see that, though. I mean, you think the sky's the limit, and you think New York skyscraper. I mean, there's a
couple of books called
connection
The
there.
Sky's the Limit, and it wasn't unusual, and it didn't stand out. But in any event, I guess it doesn't matter. They once asked Brian Epstein, who managed the Beatles, and he discovered all these different groups from Merseyside and from Liverpool. So he seemed like he had his pulse on the music business. They said to him, "What's the next big thing?" And he said, "The next big thing is a good tune." And I've always remembered that because it doesn't really matter what the book is called. The next bestseller is a good read.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter in the long run.
What's
are
your
you-
next? I was going to say that's both of the same exact thing. Continue, sorry.
I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to write next, or what I have been writing next. I have a whole bunch of ideas in the hopper, but there gets to be a point in every writer's career where they really want to slow down a bit and get off of the writing treadmill, and which I've been on for a very long time. I came out here to write my first book in '71, I think. So I'm tired of it. I want to be a TV star.
Well, here's your
go.
moment.
Here we are. I want to
Well,
be back on Plum TV.
You've been
Yes.
a radio star, a TV star. Have you found those very enjoyable?
Yes, I really
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything that takes me out of that room where
Oh,
I'm sitting
right.
over the keyboard and it's just
Yeah.
me and a screen or a Selectric, it's such a pleasure to actually be able to talk to people. And don't you find it fun to do interviews?
Oh, yes. As an artist and a writer, which I generally do, this is what I do for fun.
And Dawn, you must interview constantly.
Well, it's funny because my favorite part about my job, and I'm a writer. I am definitely a writer. I've been a writer my whole life, whether I was paid for it or not. But the most fun that I have is sitting down and talking to people and learning new things. I dread writing. which is so funny. I wait
Yeah.
until 5 o'clock in the morning on deadline day to rush in and write the story up in an hour and a
Doesn't
half.
show.
Well, and that's
No
what I
one
do.
knows.
Yeah, you're pretty amazing. I asked
Yeah.
you this the last time I saw you. How do you, your work output is so tremendous, and how do you manage to do that? And you know what you told me? You told me that you think of the lead, the opening, like when you're in the shower or driving, and then the rest of the story comes. And I've thought of that 10 times since you told it to
Really?
me.
She's
I've taken
very
20
clean.
showers, it never came to me.
Right.
I drove around the block
around.
40 times, it didn't come to me, So it's very, very hard.
But that's when it comes, and then it's very easy to flow. But I think it's funny because who said this? It wasn't Nora Ephron, but it was, oh gosh, I can't remember her name, but there's a famous author, and she's won a lot of awards, and she said, writers hate to write.
Yeah,
I can't
I've
remember.
heard that too.
She wrote Rise and Shine and Black and Blue, and I can think it, but
Oh, Black and Blue.
right.
Not Anna Quinlan.
Anna Quinlan,
Yeah,
writers hate to write. I think it's
Right.
funny. We'd much rather, wouldn't it be more fun just to sit around and do this all day?
Yeah.
Well, who was it who said the best thing about writing is having just written?
Yeah,
Somebody
I
said
love
that.
that.
I'm not
Exactly.
sure, but there's a lot of quotes about how horrible it is to write.
Right. It's more fun to sit and talk about writing than it is to actually sit down and write. It's a very, there's solitude. And so it's nice to have this. We can come
Well,
together.
people say to me, "Do you ever get writer's block?" And I get writer's block, whatever that means, often. And they say, "Well, how do you cure it?" And what I do is I look at the mortgage. No, I'm serious. I know you think I'm kidding, but I'm serious. When I'm sitting there and I'm stumped, I just go look at my bills and I think, "Uh-oh, okay, back."
Right. That's funny.
Yeah. Tell me, I was reading something that just fascinated me about Robert Lowell's daughter, and you've written about her.
Right.
Is that a blog, or tell us a little bit about that? Because I got
No,
so excited
That
writing
was
about it.
that was a piece that I did for New York Magazine.
Oh.
And I just reposted it on my now defunct blog.
Oh yeah, I
about
noticed
her,
the
yes.
blog wasn't too recent.
She
Did
didn't
you
know
stop?
if Robert,
doing it?
Yes, I stopped doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Just that she didn't really know if she was Robert Lowell's daughter.
Yes, and then
Yes.
it turned out she wasn't actually, which
Ivana Lowell, yes. She wrote a fascinating autobiography. She's a Guinness heiress, and she grew up in castles all over the place. And then it turned out that her mother, who was very, very famous, had so many affairs that she wasn't exactly sure who her father was. And so part of the book is about a hunt to find out which one of the amazing men was her father.
I think what's interesting about the way you do your investigative journalism, if I may say that, is so much affection comes out for your subjects and deep understanding. And I don't know if affection is a word you would agree with, but it's certainly empathetic and compassionate and understanding.
Well, thank you for saying that. I don't think everybody would agree with you. But I don't think people want to read negative things. In other words, if you want to write a biography about somebody, and I wrote a couple of biographies, I stopped doing that. But if you want to write a biography about somebody, it can't be a big negative takedown, unless it's a really hateful person, because readers don't want to go through that. They want there to be a sympathetic side. They want to understand the character. And so I guess that's probably why.
Yeah.
Part of it is the nature of writing about people is you have to like them. Some part has to be
We have to
likable.
find something so
Right.
we can identify with. And we actually, even with the worst people, we want to champion them in some way. You want to find something human about somebody,
Yeah.
which I think is interesting. But I think when you wrote Fool's Paradise, which is how you and I first met
Right.
forever ago, but you wrote that about Miami, about South Beach. And to me, what I loved about that book was it was almost like Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil meets like an Elmore Leonard book.
Right.
And I love that because you've got all these fascinating characters, and you really, I mean, first of all, you did the research, but you made these people just jump off the page, and I love that about
Well,
the
thank
book.
you for saying that. Somebody called, not me, somebody called Miami Beach a Charles Dickens novel with a tan. And it's because it's really a very dark city. And I didn't like. It's funny that we brought this up because about having to like your subject. I didn't like Miami Beach at all.
I got that from you, definitely. And yet, you're back here now. And I remember something you said once a long time ago about how lonely it could get out here in the winter, and that for company, you would go to Kmart and enjoy
true.
the checkout person. Do
Well,
you remember saying
that
that? I
was-
don't know what context
I had
that
finally adjusted. No, in the beginning, I would go to the AMP in East Hampton and pack bags so I could talk to the checkout lady. This is true.
I
just
get
stood
it.
there.
I
didn't
live
know
here
I didn't know
year-round.
a soul. But back then, there was tumbleweed on Main Street.
Yeah.
I mean, back then it was really empty. There was none of this
I remember I
development.
tried living here in the early 90s. It's very different
I'm talking
year
about
round.
72,
Oh my
73,
God.
74.
And you survived it
yeah.
through.
And then later in the 80s, I would go to, was it called Kmart then? I forget what.
I
It
don't
was
think
called
so.
Pierre Caldor.
Caldor.
Yes,
Yeah.
Pierre Caldor it was called.
Pierre Caldor.
It sounds so
Well, it
refined.
was the Hamptons. You just couldn't
Right.
say it was Caldor.
Yes.
And so one day I was wandering up and down the aisles, and I saw Kurt Vonnegut. And seriously, and I thought, oh, this is what writers do in the Hamptons. They wander around places like, and so I didn't feel so
When
bad
they're not
about
at Bobby
it.
Vans in those
When
days,
yes,
right?
exactly.
But Kurt Vonnegut didn't just wander, he ambled.
Oh, yeah.
Ambled.
Ambled. I met him on the street,
Did you?
ambling.
He did.
You do that very well.
It was very funny, and when I, not to make this about me, but I saw him, I was in the city, and I knew it was Kurt Vonnegut. Obviously, it's Kurt Vonnegut. And I said, "You look like Kurt Vonnegut," to give him an out, and he said, "I am."
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but he was,
Yeah.
So now in the winter,
Uh-huh.
when I get bored, I decided I'm going to grow a beard. Out of boredom, I swear to God. And
That's how that evolved?
Yeah, that's how. Yeah,
Well,
I
it
was
suits
watching
you.
like
It looks
Honey
great.
Boo Boo on TV, or some like Tennessee, malt makers or something, and they all have these giant hillbilly beards. And so I thought, I'm going to have a hillbilly beard.
You'll join them.
Somebody
Yeah.
said it'll take 2 years to grow down to here, but what do you know?
Well, that is truly boredom, watching a beard grow.
It's also, very good
Very
for
zen.
this kind of chin stroking, like, yeah.
Yeah.
oh, it's very writerly.
Very
up there,
good
right,
like that,
Right.
right? Yes,
But
yes.
have you found it's changed out here so that it fascinates you more to be here year-round? Is there a different population, or have you changed? Why are you still here? We love that you're here, but we're flattered you're here.
Well, I mean, I love this place on such a deep level. I mean, this place is really kind of family to me. I've said that to people before, and I don't think they really get it, but I mean, I really, really, really love this place, which is one reason why I ran for office and caused myself so much trouble. At the
I
same,
voted for you.
Thank you. That's very,
You know
very
I did.
sweet. That's
Yeah,
very
I
nice
told
of
you many times.
That's very nice of you. And Dawn, you don't live in East Hampton,
Well, no,
so
I
you
know. I
couldn't
live
have
in
voted
Sag
for me.
Harbor, so.
But you would have.
I would have, although I have no political affiliation on this television show.
That's okay.
Oh, I
Neither
shouldn't
do
have said that either, sorry.
Well, I mean, voting for somebody doesn't indicate political affiliation because you can vote for whoever you want, no matter
Right.
what your affiliation is. But in any event, I do think it's changed so drastically now. I think it's so very, very different that many of the reasons that I fell in love with it about are gone. And I find it a struggle now for me to retain my affection for it. There's no other place for me to go, though. I mean, I'm not going to move.
That's what I was going to say. Where else do we go?
This is home.
Florida.
This is home.
Ugh,
Oh, boy,
No,
no.
maybe
What?
the Cotswolds.
the Cotswolds. I never thought about that.
I'm starting a commune there of people my age.
How's your brother, by the way? Your amazingly talented, wonderful,
Thank
kind
you.
brother.
He is living and doing very well in Paris and
Paris.
performing around Europe mostly.
Elliot
Yeah.
Murphy, yes. He's just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
I'll send him your regards.
when I was the music critic of the New York Daily News, I actually was their second pop critic, rock and roll critic. And at the time, it was disreputable to be a rock and roll critic. And that's how I first heard your brother's music
Okay.
and got to meet him. And I'm so fond of him. He was so great. And he even said something to me once that I was so crazy about. I asked if I could have it, kind of like not steal it, but if he would give it to me. And he said, we were talking about the Sunset Marquis Hotel in Los Angeles, and he said, well, sunglasses listen while swimming pools glisten to every word I say. Maybe the other way around. Swimming pools glisten while sunglasses listen to every word I say. It just came off of his
He's a
tongue.
rapper.
He's great. He's what?
A rapper.
A rapper?
A rapper.
Yeah,
Now
I mean that's
he's
no,
rapping?
but I'm saying
Oh,
that's
you mean
like
he was able to make that?
yeah.
How great is it though to have someone quote your words back to you? I just when you said that, I'm like, it's amazing when someone can say, "Oh, I read this." But you brought up the perfect little segue because you have written about musicians, you have written about fashion designers, you have written about real estate, and I would think those are kind of your three big wheelhouses, right?
Well, yeah, I
But
guess. Yeah.
What's your
What's a
your-
wheelhouse?
You know, your this is word definition TV.
You mean my three
your
main
strengths.
areas of interest?
Right.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, I don't know, definitely. You know, I wrote about rock and roll because I was a rock and roll critic. And then suddenly it seemed that fashion designers were becoming like rock stars.
Yeah.
And so, and I was tired of writing about rock stars. I'd written a lot of books about rock stars. So I segued, I did Halston and Calvin Klein. And that, you know, every time I write a book, there's like, oh, so much turmoil and everybody is going to hate me. You know, I wrote about Studio 54 and all the
Right.
Studio 54 people said they'd never talk to me again. And then my next
That's a
book
lot of
was-
people too.
well, my next book was about the Beatles, and when it was on the bestseller list, all the Studio 54 people wanted to know me again.
Right.
And all the Beatle people hated me. And then when I wrote about Halston, it was like, oh, the fashion world so hates you and everything. And then when I wrote about Calvin Klein, couldn't wait to get their hands on the book. And so it just,
That's very brave of him, don't you think? I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be controversial. Even running for office is yet another thing where they're actually counting the votes. You must have a very strong ego or great friends to prompt you through these difficult times. Most people would have a lot of trouble with that, Stephen.
I don't know about it. Maybe it's just a deep streak of masochism or something. I don't know. It's about, you know, about ego or what. I try to find a subject that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And that is
And
going
you're
to.
not afraid to say what you think, which most people
No, you
are.
really can't be. You know, part of that has to do with being gay and coming out and learning to live in a world where when I came out in the early 1970s, you were very much ostracized and sidelined and people were ashamed of it and all the rest. And so I had to be comfortable with who I was and not be afraid of saying the way I felt. So I think part of that informed, I think a lot of that informed the way I approached the world.
I bet it would, because I think at a very young age then, you'd learn it's not comfortable not being me. It's not comfortable not being real. And when you made that decision, it must have been such a relief.
Well, you know, I was tortured as a child, and then when I was 15 or so, I went to see a psychiatrist who said that he could cure me, a Freudian
Oh,
psychiatrist.
for Pete's sake.
So I spent from 15 to 25 in a cure, and it evidently didn't work.
It didn't take, Stephen.
So it wasn't, you know, like a sudden moment of revelation. You know, finally, when I was about 25 years old, I said, this is, you know, I'm not going to do this. I'm hardwired. And I just said, okay, I'm gay. You know, that's it. But those 10 years, I had wonderful relationships with women. I had just great relationships
did.
with women that I think many gay men don't, you
Yeah.
know, have the opportunity for. And that was very, very important to me, you know. And still, to this day, I always say, socially, I feel very much more comfortable in a situation with a woman than I do with a gay man. And what's happened is most of my friends are you know, straight couples. And as opposed to my being completely surrounded by a gay world, which many gay men wind up with.
Which seems very limiting, because I wouldn't want to just be friendly with people who have my, you know, sexual preference. What does that have to do with anything?
No, exactly.
That would be choosing your friends because they all had red hair. Or
yeah.
be choosing my friends because
Right.
they're all 5'4". Yeah, it's
So
it's
you
good.
wind up talking
right.
about like what the best hotel room is in Capri. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that, and I
Yeah.
don't know how to arrange flowers, and any you know all of those fake attributes that are assigned to gay men I have none of them.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Well, I do think you're a very unique individual, and it would be very hard to put you in any category, Stephen. So that alone is a challenge, I would think, in life, because you are not a cookie cutter type of human being. So
I think it gives you extra skills.
Yeah.
I think it really does give you skills with learning how to deal with the world. By the way, when I was drafted during the Vietnam War, and I went for my physical, and I had to tell them that I was gay, and then, of course they didn't believe me, and I went through such hell trying to convince them. And then finally they had a stamp, and they stamped my folder. I swear to this is true. Polymorphous perverse. so, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? So that's kind of the way I feel. You know,
That's your autobiography.
polymorphous
I love
perverse.
it.
You know what? I've been looking for a title for my memoir for a long time. I
Perfect.
was thinking of ill-gotten gains,
Oh, I like that
gains
too.
and losses.
yes,
no,
right.
but polymorphous perverse is a wonderful title.
It trips off the tongue. It really
Yeah.
does. I love it.
I'm not going to be able to sell that in school.
But isn't it funny the way, I mean, I just interviewed John Gruen, who did this book called Two Men, which is he'll be a guest soon.
yes.
He's a great guest.
I
He's
love
terrific,
him.
John
Yeah.
Gruen.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's really
Oh
terrific.
yeah, what a great guy,
he's a great guy.
and Joe Pintoro, who was featured
Yeah,
in his
he was
book,
featured,
is
right.
coming soon.
Um,
yeah,
But how amazing is it that times have changed so dramatically in 40, 50 years? I mean, how do you feel, or do you still consider yourself an advocate?
I'm totally shocked that all of this has happened. I'm so shocked that I thought that the gay community was squandering a lot of collateral on setting up gay marriage as the next thing they needed to achieve. But I was completely wrong, because it's turned the world around. I think I'm amazed we've come this far. I'm amazed that gay people are such an open part of society, and it's just terrific. And it says a lot about America. It says a lot about how wonderful really this country is. I get all weepy about America, but I really do. I love
do
this
you need
country.
a tissue?
No, I'm okay. I'll hold back my tears.
It's Michelle's goal to make every guest cry, so we're really
The
gonna work
Barbara
on that.
Walters thing, huh?
They were just kidding me about
Ask
that.
me about the dead dog or something.
Oh, no,
No,
I'll
no, no, I'm
cry.
only kidding.
But yeah, did you lose your job?
No, not recently.
No.
But I'm one of the few
Shep
people
Silk.
probably, that's the living dog.
Oh, good.
Remember Barbara Koppel made that
Oh, yes.
documentary, that not
Yes.
very good documentary
About
about
the
the
Hamptons,
Yes.
yes.
And remember there was some guy whose dog was dying, who was like all throughout the documentary? Well, that was me. So,
Oh,
my
that's
dog,
right.
that's right.
That's right. I do remember that.
yeah, so my dog sort of died on TV.
Oh, yeah.
Poor thing.
I just
I'll do
lost
anything,
my dog.
anything to get it. You did?
Yeah. Well, last summer.
Aw,
Yeah. It's
so
very
painful.
painful. Yeah.
it's very painful.
Yeah. It is very painful.
Did you get another dog?
I did.
Good for you.
It was the only way I cured myself.
It's-
I
it's-
recommend it if, it sounds heartless, but it's the only way I could sleep that night, was just to get on the internet and start researching my
Doesn't
next
sound
dog.
heartless at all.
It doesn't.
No.
Well,
It's healthy. I really believe it's healthy.
yeah. It did help my child who found our dog dead
Oh, my
in the
God.
dining room. You know, it was horribly
that's
traumatic in
terrible.
the middle of the night. And so I just stayed up all night and,
But you know, if that dog, if your late dog could speak to you,
yes.
it would have said, give a home to another dog.
Yes.
Exactly.
You know,
And it's the
Exactly.
greatest compliment to our dog Maggie that Gracie came along.
I agree.
Yeah.
See, now I'm getting choked up.
Aw,
Anyway, I've got this
Yeah.
great dog, Shep, which I got from
Oh.
the Animal Rescue Fund,
Yes.
which is one of the great animal rescue funds in the country.
Yeah.
It's
Isn't
one
it?
of- it's
ARF,
wonderful.
do you mean?
ARF
Yeah.
is run so well, and it's a
Yes.
model for all other animal rescue funds. They're just terrific, and I really lucked out this time. I've got a wonderful, wonderful dog, and we have to allow dogs to be on the beach. We've got to educate the public to clean up after their dogs, not ban the dogs. We need an educated public, and we need clean beaches, and we
Yes.
can do that
can do
without
both.
banning the dogs.
right,
Yes.
right. It's such a pleasure. Dogs go into ecstasy on the beach.
I do. I
Yes,
love
I
it.
know. It's wonderful.
Now, you grew up in Brooklyn and went to Erasmus High School.
That's true.
That's where my dad went.
Really?
Yeah, Elliot Murphy.
Your dad,
And-
Elliot Murphy's Aqua show,
Yeah,
was your dad's, he had a musical show, right?
yeah, it was the amphitheater where the World's Fair is. I'm writing a book about it now, so
Great.
Maybe you'll interview me
I was going to
one
say,
day
you
for that.
interview me, and I'll
Okay.
interview you when both of our books come out, and then Stephen can come
Okay.
on, and he can
And then
be
we're
the
doing a
moderator.
book together, but that's hush
A
hush.
tour, exactly.
Yeah.
Back to you.
So I did go to Erasmus Hall High School, yes.
Yeah, and
And I loved
did,
it.
did Marshall Brickman go there and
I think
Mel
he
Brooks?
did. I'm not sure. There's a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
Barbara Streisand. A
Yeah,
lot of famous people.
A lot of famous people
Wait,
went
Martin
there.
Scorsese, didn't he go to school with you?
No.
You studied with him.
I studied with him. He was my
did?
yes. He was my faculty advisor, my instructor at NYU Film School.
I love that.
I still have all my term papers that I wrote and his remarks in the corner and stuff like that. Yes.
So you went to film school.
I went to NYU Film School.
Boy.
Yes.
Do you still have aspirations to do
No.
something with film?
No.
No. You
But
said
you've
that
had a
very
few
quickly.
films, though, that you've had a few pieces of your work that have been turned into.
I've had books turned
Right.
into movies, but I've never written a script that was produced. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Halston, one of my books about the fashion designer Halston,
Yes, right.
has been in an option for maybe 20, 25 years. In fact, one of the major options was Alec Baldwin was going to be Halston.
I cannot see that.
No, neither can I.
Wow, I really can't see that.
was
Although
gonna
he's
be
a
Halston
tremendous,
for a while.
yeah, he's a tremendous actor, but I,
And now it's Kevin Spacey owns the book. Kevin
Really?
Spacey wants to play Halston. It's a great role for an actor.
right.
Yeah,
It's a really good role for an actor.
yeah.
So, but no, so far, Philistines of the Hedgerow should be a movie, I always thought.
Yes.
Oh,
know,
that
or a
would
play.
be wonderful. Are you in touch with our wonderful Elena Prohaska Glenn?
We run into each other at the grocery store occasionally.
Okay.
And she, of course, was wonderful to me in the writing of the book and happy with the way the book came out.
Yeah, she's a fabulous woman. She's
Terrific.
an actress. She does everything. One of my close
Fascinating,
friends.
fascinating.
A fascinating woman. We should have you two on together sometime. Well, we're going to run out of time. Can you believe
know.
it? It went by in a minute.
We could have
does.
spoken for 5 hours with you
I know.
easily.
Thank you for
Yeah.
asking me on one of your first shows. It's going to be great to have you doing these shows on LTV. It will be just terrific for all of us watching.
Will you come back often?
Anytime you want me to. I live just around the corner.
You
Can I
do?
bring my dog?
Yes.
Oh, could
Can I
you?
bring Shep?
Yes.
That would be wonderful.
That'd be great. I would love
Yeah,
that.
okay, we can focus on dogs more for that one.
Thank you.
There's so much to focus on with this guy, right?
No kidding.
Thank
We
you. That's
scratched
very
the
sweet.
surface.
Thank you.